Hey guys, welcome to episode 2 of our Mashable Podcast. Now, again, you can find this podcast on Spotify as well as on our YouTube channel. Now, if you are driving, please do drive safe. But if you're at home, kick back, relax, because today's topic is about how our art and culture in Southeast Asia has been influenced by the West and vice versa. And today, I have two very special guests here. I have Sukhbir and Kenneth. So, do you guys want to introduce yourself?
You first then.
For myself, okay.
Yeah.
I am Sukhbir. I am the co-founder of Eccentrica. It's an arts and humanities content website based in Malaysia. We write a lot about artists from across the world, but mostly focus on Malaysia.
Nice.
Nice.
Ken?
Hi, my name is Kenneth, and I work in Ref Asia. I produce, direct, and create content. Can you hear me now?
All right. So the reason why I brought you here is because we want to split this topic into, well, generally about the arts, so theater, music, and maybe drawings, as well as film for Kenneth, right? So now let's start off this podcast with simple questions, okay? What do you feel about the state of arts in Southeast Asia? So let's go with Sukhbir. Sukhbir, you want to start first?
Okay, I think the arts in Southeast Asia is blooming. You know, you can actually see it in Malaysia also, right? So there's a lot of new talent emerging, a lot of new style, because of Facebook, Instagram. You know, there's a lot of new talent coming out across everywhere. I think it's not only just in Southeast Asia; it's across the world as well.
Across Asia.
Yeah.
Mostly China, I think.
China as well?
For film, especially.
Okay.
When you watch film these days, you will see credits in the opening and the ending. It gets longer these days.
Okay.
Like, it used to be just 20th Century Fox, and then
Right.
now you have some China company, Tencent movies, Alibaba something, and then they come in and then they just hog up the whole credit scene in the beginning, and then at the end you will see a bunch of Chinese sponsorships as well. So I think it's booming. I agree with you.
Now, the reason I want to know is because do you feel that the reason why they do this is because in China there's actually a law, isn't it, that doesn't allow Western films to be added unless the Chinese people have worked on it.
Yeah,
Right.
I think that can be one of the reason. I mean that is the main driver, and I think that is also smart on the Chinese government part. I feel that they are protecting their industry as well, and having this law. I don't know if it's a law or policy. Most likely a law, because but yeah, I think it helps to bring in also the investors lah. I think that is more on like the business front, but I think like Chinese export of movies in general, actually they are also getting better and better.
Yeah.
Like if you watch Netflix, there's this film that I really love called The Wandering Earth. Yeah, that one was like a very good Chinese made, but that one is influenced a bit by like Western and it's like sci-fi, but it has a very interesting story plotline for me at least.
Their CGI also has been improving tremendously, right, over the years. I mean, you can see
Yes.
Very surprised by hearing that you like The Wandering Earth, because I think our cameraman John was not very happy with the show.
Why? Explain.
It was a flying Earth.
Isn't that cool? It's cool.
All right. So moving on to the next question. Now, at what age did you realize that this is what you want to do, right? So let's go with Kenneth this time.
Probably like 10 years ago. I think I was 18. No, I'm 29 now. 19. Yeah, around that range. Because that's when I started to experiment with video cameras. I got my first video camera. I bugged my parents to get it for me when I was around 18, 19. At that point was like wanting to join the crowd, like wanting to be cool, wanting to be with the cool kids, going out for shoots and stuff. And then when I went to study overseas in Melbourne, that was, for me, I think that was the kickoff point, because I brought some of my stuff that I did here over to participate in the film festivals and stuff, and I asked if they want to like show this, and some of them actually were quite, they were quite interested and they showed it. So for me, that was kind of like the catalyst also, like, okay, this is it. Like this is what I want to do. But also on the side job, I would do like interviews and stuff lah. But talking about film and stuff, yeah, I think that was like the point, the moment.
For me, I think when I was a young kid, about 6-7 years old, like that. Yeah, I just enjoyed drawing, and it came to a point where in school, I was in primary school, I used to draw in the textbooks and the notebooks, and my mom would actually, like check the notebooks, and she'll realize that, oh, shoot, yeah, you're actually drawing instead of doing your homework. You're actually drawing. So I used to get beating from my mom. Yeah, my
Same.
mom, she just beat me up.
Anything to do with arts, Asian parents,
Yeah,
no.
And then the best part is, right, so I used to draw in the notebooks. She'll check my notebooks, and then she'll beat me. Then the next week she does another spot check, the same cartoons again. She'll beat me again for that. So she forgets that I had actually drawn this before. Yeah.
Asian parents, right? You're not a doctor, you're not a lawyer, you're not an engineer, you're not my child. All right, so the first thing that I want to talk about is actually how art and culture actually birthed in Southeast Asia. Now, do you know that the first region where arts and culture was actually found was actually in Vietnam, right? And this was all the way back during the prehistoric age. Now, it's not simple art, they actually created like silk paintings, they created sculptures, potteries, and this kind of thing. And a lot of it was influenced by China, because at that point of time, that's where the Buddhist religion was making its move throughout the world, right? So a lot of this art was influenced by that.
When you say prehistoric age, like, what do you mean? Like how
which
prehistoric?
year?
Yeah.
Oh,
How
this is
prehistoric it
so. This is during the hundreds, like the years of hundreds, right? Towards the thousands.
So I'm sure Vietnam wasn't called Vietnam then.
No, it wasn't called
right?
Vietnam.
Yeah,
That's
it's
why
like-
it's the region of
Right.
Vietnam, right? And then, so after that, the art moved forward, and it was influenced by India, because that was the time where Southeast Asia is the mid hub
Traders,
between India and China. So that's where the Indian influence came, and then art moved on from there. So that's actually very interesting, because I realized that a lot of, especially in Asia, right, that's the beauty of being multicultural, right? And it's not only multicultural with the people that we live here, but it's also because of traders, right? They come in, they influence our art. So I want to know that in your line of work, okay, does multicultural influence your work?
I mean, I'm doing this in Malaysia, so most of my clients would always ask for, when I first started out, especially, they will always ask for Muhiba, where's my Malay Chinese Indian, like they want all like the races in the advertisement lah, or in the videos that I create lah. So I feel like it kind of how to say, like it kind of cemented to me, like now everything that I create have to try and include like all these elements, like Muhibaness in my videos that I create. But if you say things I want to create personally, I feel like I want to try to not let it influence so much. The reason being is not that I don't want to be Muhiba or what, but I find it hard to it's kind of like Avengers, where you have too many characters, too many backstory to explain, and then you have to establish all these people to let them know what's their background and everything. So for me, I feel like, so one of the short stories I'm writing now is like purely based on my experience as a child, and my background is like I'm from a Chinese family, and everything is just Chinese culture, and I find it easier to tell that story instead of trying to mix in what my Malay friend thinks, what my Indian friend thinks, and that kind of thing. So for me, I feel like if I don't go so multiracial, it's easier to express when it comes to film. Yeah.
So it is tough to include all cultures inside your work. Do you feel that way?
I feel it's tough to make it good. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like I don't want to, but it's kind of like you have. For me, I like to establish my characters and stuff, and if I don't establish them well enough, then the audience won't understand. Right? So from the get-go, if I can just establish it, like this is what is the background, what is their culture like, what is their life like, then it's easier to just move on with the story. Yeah.
And for you, so Bear, I know that you do a lot of work in theatre as well, right? So same question to Kenneth. Does this multicultural thing affect your work in whatever you do?
I think it does in a way, because there is no escaping the fact that Malaysia is a multiracial country. There has to be some way or other you have to like actually reveal the reality of things, because after all, art is rooted in reality. It's inspired by reality. So the reality of things is that we have so many different cultures. Every single day, our daily lives, we meet Malay guy, Chinese, Indian. There's always something happening. So even in theater, even in writings, I think a lot of other even art. In Malaysia, in fact, I think the best cartoonist that has actually really done a great job in this is Lat. A lot of Malaysians like his cartoons because he includes all these multicultural elements. He shows the funny side of things. Like, although yes, we are multiracial, but he also shows that how much of differences there is, and it's through art he actually shows the humorous side of things as well. Yeah.
But it's easy to show the multiculturalness through a Malaysian eye.
Yeah.
So take away being Chinese, being Malay, being Indian, but showing it through the lens of a Malaysian. Because I am not from China, I don't know, or I can't relate to some of the things that they relate to as well, right? So I think like what you said, Lat and all, they are able to kind of weave in the multiculturalness through being Malaysian, like the Malaysianness actually, right? Because like nasi lemak and everything, like we enjoy it. I believe like Westerners wouldn't understand some of the Lat comics probably, because the context is all Malaysian, right? So I think the multiculturalness comes from being Malaysian lah. What do you think?
So there is a good and bad,
There
isn't
is
it?
good
There
and
is
bad,
definitely good and bad. The fact that our works are always full of culture, right?
Yeah.
Because we are exposed to so much of culture, and in fact with theatre as well, right? Because in fact for myself, I've actually worked in theatre as well, right? I've been part of a theatre group, especially in high school a lot, and we realized that when we have a theatre work, right, that incorporates a lot of the cultures together, it seems that it feels inclusive, right? Everybody feels inclusive. Like the Chinese people can relate, the Malays, the Indians, they all can relate, right? But do you feel that, again, stories being told with a multicultural theme is very focused on just that? If you want to branch out, let's say you want to make it into a sci-fi, right, and you have multicultural inside, it's a bit tricky, because in a lot of sci-fi movies, although yes, they do have different types of, let's say, alien species, and well, they don't really speak much about culture, right? It's more of fractions and races and that kind of thing, right? So for me, in my honest opinion, I feel that culture is definitely a good thing, but never take culture as the thing that you have to have in your work, right? It's not the most important. My opinion, not the most important. It does make for good storytelling, but never should you limit yourself to that.
But I think it would be interesting to tell it from a Malaysian lens. If you follow me, I'm not talking about like from Malay, Chinese, Indian, that kind of culture, like your like Chinese culture. How is it like with the Oriental design and all those things? But more like, if you want to, for me, I think if we want to tell it in the multicultural sense, I think we can kind of. For Malaysian, I think we're lucky enough. We have that one lens that we can look through, which is the Malaysian lens.
Yeah.
How would this sci-fi film or sci-fi theater be expressed through a Malaysian lens? It's kind of a bit like the zombie film that I think our friend Terrence did.
Well, The Walking Dead.
Yeah, The Walking Dead. It was through a Malaysian lens.
Yeah.
You don't really need to think about how the Indian culture is, the Chinese culture is. You get what I mean?
Yeah.
So it becomes more like a Malaysian culture rather than Malay, Chinese, Indian culture kind of thing. Same goes to Indonesia, I think. Like Indonesians, they also have their particular Indonesian cultureness. Every time we always Malaysia versus Indonesia, Malaysia versus Indonesia. So there's also that Indonesian camp. They also have their own culture. Everyone there speaks the same language, whether you're Malay, Chinese, or Indian. Right? So like, I feel like looking through that lens is one of the ways that like artists like us, right, can use as a tool to include that multiculturalness in our works.
So does that mean we need to have a lens in order to
create works.
Yeah, is that what you mean?
I'm a filmmaker, so everything I see is through a lens.
A metaphorical lens.
Yeah, but I don't know. What about theatre? Like, how do you guys normally create?
Okay, so a lot of the recent theatre works that has been on stage has been it's been issue based. It's a lot of either mental health issues, racism. It could also be something to do with politics, societal issues, those kind of things.
Right.
But so there's no like okay, when they create theatre products, and I'm talking in the sense of the Actors Studio, KLPAC, right? So when they create the products, they don't necessarily say, we need to get a Chinese person, we need to get an Indian guy, we need there's no such thing like that. It's just a story about this issue, and we're just gonna highlight about the issue. So the whether there's gonna be a Chinese person playing this character or Indian person playing that character, it's out of the box.
So once I remember when I was helping with a play in KLPAC, one of the directors, I guess you would consider them as a director, right? One of the directors told me, and this was something that I remembered and I really, really loved when he told me that, is that on the stage, on theatre, there is no religion.
Yeah.
There is no religion.
Yeah,
and I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah.
Really beautiful. And that really really got me into loving theatre even more. Like, I honestly, for myself, even though that we do all this Mashable work, we focus on camera work and all that, right? Theatre is still where my heart is, and it's always going to be there. And I think it's because of those words, right? Now, I want to move on to the next topic, which is how works of art has been influenced by East and the West, right? So let's start with the West, right? How our art, right, the Asian art is influenced by the West, right? So Asian art was initially never influenced by the West, right? Because we are the one that created art first, right? We are the most cultural people, and there from culture came art. And the interesting thing that a lot of people say that, in this old arts of work, right, they have like this British naval ships, and all these ancient drawings. But it was interesting because we were being colonized, right, by the West, right? In Malaysia, it was the British. First, it was the Portuguese first, then it was the British, then it was the Japanese, right? Right. And what I think is very beautiful about that is that all these works that they do is actually a rebellion, right? It's because, let's say, for example, we are all, let's say, we are theatre people, right? We never held a gun before. We never held a sword before, right? But what we can do is create these works, right? Create this film, create this theatre work, right? That increases the morale of the people, right? And I want to know what you all think about that. And has that culture died off?
Subir?
Okay, I think right, this is a very interesting question because I think that there are several reasons why these artworks were created in the first place. Let's go back to the start, beginning of time, right? When humans first learned, and the cavemen were staying in the cave, they first discovered that they could actually draw on the walls, right? And honestly, I do not know what. So you are saying that the Asians are the first ones to be producing art.
Do you feel that?
I don't think so, because I really honestly nobody knows. We do not know.
It's actually not documented.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and the only proof that we have is, okay, when you go to the caves, there are a bunch of drawings, and that's all.
Yeah.
But I think there's a reason why people started doing that. Of course, one is act of rebellion. Number two is to disseminate, spread information and stuff. I think the third reason is because they want to show the world that, look, I exist. That's why I'm doing this. I exist. So that's why now when we go back, we look at the cave walls, we're like, oh, okay, this. Then back then, prehistoric time, people used to be doing all these things, right? And I think in what you are going back to the artworks, the paintings about colonialism and stuff. The reason why they do that is to actually show people that, look, I existed, and this is what happened when I existed. These guys came.
It's a form of preserving history.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then these days we call it vandalism.
Yes, correct.
And nowadays it's all about Instagramming. So that's how.
Right. And so instead
days
from cave walls to our 48 megapixel smartphones, and
These days you go to somewhere, you take a stone and you carve your name there. Kenneth was here.
Or
Vandalism.
F you carve it on the tree or something.
Yeah, I think the whole cultural thing through art and stuff, rebellion and stuff. From what I've read or understood about art when I was like, just browsing through and going down a rabbit hole of the internet, right, was that usually why art is created is for people to express themselves, and to also send a message. Crap, you see, now I cannot name drop because I forgot the person's name, but the guy with the girl with the balloon, what was his name again?
Bilqis Hijaz. Is it the Malaysian girl?
No, the guy who shredded his painting.
Banksy.
Banksy.
Oh,
that's
Banksy,
right.
yeah.
So his artwork is all about rebellion.
Okay.
And he remains anonymous. Yeah. That is a sign of rebellion.
Yeah.
In fact, we shouldn't. That's Banksy, right?
Yeah.
In our own context, in Asian context, we got Ai Weiwei. He's a famous Chinese artist who's now in exile.
Yeah.
And then in Malaysia, we've got people like Fahmi Reza, Zunar. These two fellas, and actually there are a few more other cartoonists as well who are very, very instrumental. In really shifting people's mindset and perception about the government back then.
It's kind of like, in a way, how we view satire and also parodies. Like the Western, they have the Onion News.
Yeah.
I don't know about the Asian context. I don't know.
Infowars.
We have any. Singapore got like the news and stuff where they try to lighten things up. At the same time, also try to give information to the audience. And I think through like artworks and stuff, like they also use that kind of satirism and also that kind of language to tell people about what is happening and what they want to do, and what they feel like doing, like in their tough times.
Okay.
Yeah.
So actually, rebellion also came in film because the first one of the first films ever made, right, was actually in 1906. Right, it was an Australian film that was
Australian.
It was Australian, yeah, which was the story of Kelly Gang.
Okay.
Right, so there was this guy called Nat Kelly. Now he was viewed as an anti-hero, right, at that point of time, and they created that.
Kelly Gang. Okay.
So they created that it's actually a feature length. It's actually a very long movie, and it basically showed about how he stood up to the colonial rule.
Right.
Which at that time Australia was against British. Yeah.
Australia was just full of British
prisoners. Right. No offense to the Australian audience.
Basically a huge island of prisoners.
So it's nice to know that even in video, one of the first works of art was a rebellion. Right. And that's pretty cool. All right. So now we talked about how our art is being influenced by the West. Now let's talk about how the West art is being influenced by Asia, right? And I think this is it comes down to trade, right? Because last time while we were trading, at the same time they used to give their works of art to us, and then they used to see our work of art, and they thought that, oh, okay, obviously being merchants, they saw that and they were like, can sell that for good money, and sell that for good money back home. And which actually worked, right? Because they actually took those artworks and went back to the West. And the West actually created many different types of work that is massively influenced by Asia. So these people actually came over to Asia. They viewed the culture, they loved the culture, and they decided that instead of buying it, I can make it back at home. Like they said, great artists. What's the
great artist copy? Yeah.
And what's that one? Who steals?
Wins.
Great artist copy.
Good artists create.
Good
great artists steal.
Yeah. And that's how it's been like, right, for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And
steal, guys.
yeah. So now we talk about movies, right? Now, do you feel that every fighting movie that has produced from the West is Muay Thai? It's always Muay Thai fighting. Or boxing, but boxing is a Western thing, right? So
or either Kung Fu.
Yeah, or either Kung Fu.
Mostly those that I watch are Jackie Chan, Jet Li,
Bruce Lee,
or the Lees. They are more Kung Fu lah, Chinese influence. Ip Man, right? The more Chinese influence. I don't know about Muay Thai. I think like Tony Jaa kind of brought.
It's more recent now.
Yeah, it's more recent now. The biggest thing now is actually MMA.
Yes.
And for some reason, wrestling with The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, and his People's Elbow and everything. Yeah. So Muay Thai. Why were you asking about Muay Thai again?
So I was saying that in a lot of action movies in the West, right, a lot of the fighting styles are using Muay Thai, right, or a form of mixed martial arts.
Of
And-
late lah, more
yeah,
recently lah.
Yeah, more recently, right.
More recently, I think mixed martial art. Yes, I'm not sure about Muay Thai. I think some of my friends who practice Muay Thai here thinks that Muay Thai is still a very unknown
Form of
or
martial arts,
not so famous martial art for some reason. Yeah. Maybe it's made more popular now because of like the fighters the MMA fighters who are using those styles. But MMA also is like a mix of different martial arts.
Yeah.
It's not all Muay Thai. I mean,
Mhm.
majority, I think, is Muay Thai lah, right? The foundation of it. But
Yes.
then it's a lot of like jiu-jitsu,
Yeah, hand
grappling
movements,
and
yeah.
stuff. Their main objective is to just disable their opponent lah.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's what I think. But for me, what I'm watching the most is actually just The Rock jumping here and there, giving people's elbow everywhere.
Or a stunner.
Basically, action movie has changed from proper actual fighting to just fluff, right?
Yeah, well,
Style of
depends
fighting.
on what you watch.
Mhm.
Like if you watch like John Wick, like they actually have proper choreography, like
Yeah.
fight scenes and
Yeah.
stuff like. And these gunfight scenes are like they are properly choreographed to make it look real. So and they don't, and when they shoot, they actually go wide. Like most fight scenes that those cheapo directors, sorry cheapo directors, but directors who cannot direct fight scenes, right? They will cut into like close-ups.
Right.
Like when you hit someone, they will cut to the other angle, and then
Right.
then you hear a sound effect. But when you see for me a good fight scene is when the camera is really far away.
Right. It's one
Like when all those old Hong Kong films when Sammo Hong, Jackie Chan,
Yeah.
those kind of era where the camera is just far away and then you see the fight just happen.
thing.
Bruce
Yeah.
Lee.
Yeah.
Those to me are like the best fight
Yeah.
scenes. Yeah.
Especially Bruce Lee one. Those are
Yeah.
nice.
No, I just want to come back to Sukhbir, right? Do you feel that in theater as well, right? A lot of it Western works, like a lot of them are a lot of acts that they do, right, is based off Western writers.
Yeah. So you see, like even when you there has been a lot of plays that has been staged has been influenced by Western playwrights.
Mm.
For instance, recently there was one. It's called. It was translated into Bahasa Malaysia in Malay, and it's titled Kandang. But it's based off George Orwell's Animal Farm. But they made it very Malaysian. Yeah. So the director Omar Ali made it very Malaysian. So there are two ways how Malaysian theatre practitioners they do this. They either stage it and make it really like Western. That means the characters are all dressed up as Westerners.
Right.
They have Western names, or they turn it around and they make it Asian. They adapt it to the Asian.
Right. They adapt even the storyline.
Yeah.
Right.
The storyline, maybe the character name, the setting,
Right.
the language they speak. Yeah, they make it very localized.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked a lot about how Western movies are being influenced and all that, but I think this is a question I want to give to both of you, right? So, do you think that Westernization is a good thing?
I personally feel like I don't know. I feel like it works both ways because in the art scene you are always looking out for what is new, what can you reference, and actually these days a lot of it is really referencing, right? Like good movies these days, good film these days are always a reference of something somewhere else. I feel even for music as well, like all this cross-cultural thing to me is a good thing. If you talk about Westernization in the context of globalization, then I feel like maybe I sometimes I wonder like what would the world be like if there wasn't globalization? Like what would Malaysian culture be like, or what would like Japanese culture be like? What would China culture be like if there is no globalization at all? Right? Maybe we would end up like North Korea. Maybe we will end up even better, more advanced, right? Like if we weren't influenced. But then again, when you think about it, if we weren't influenced, then there wouldn't be innovations in the art scene. Then things might get
Stagnated.
right? Correct.
So, babe, what do you think?
I think I'm a little bit on the fence, right? On one hand, I see the importance of preserving the culture. I see the need to, because there are a lot of cultures have very beautiful practices, very beautiful languages, very beautiful things that they do, and Western culture comes in, influences it, and it sort of like changes it, right? But at the same time, I also see that you need to somehow adapt to times. So, times are always changing. Yeah. In fact, we are now having conversation in English because we were colonized a long time ago. Yeah. So it's I'm a little bit on the fence, but I think the more important question is, it's not about westernization. There's been a lot of talk about cultural appropriation and all that stuff. Like what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, that's a very sensitive topic.
That's a really heavy one.
Topic.
Maybe for another
maybe we'll have this topic behind the camera. Or maybe over a pint of beer.
But talking about the culture and stuff, like how it's being influenced and stuff. Yeah. I mean, we will never know. Because if it never happened, we will also never know.
Yeah.
Right. It's kind of like catch-22 thing, right? Like maybe if it wasn't influenced, it would never have innovated or improved. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And if it did, then like you said, it changes.
It changes.
Right. Yeah. So there is always that kind of pros and cons.
But I think in the end, right? In the end, like it or not, human beings have a tendency to influence one another, regardless of which background they come from. Like let's like if you look at Indonesia, for instance, they were heavily influenced by the Indian traders, the Majapahit Empire and all that came about because of India, and then you have Vietnam who were heavily influenced and still are influenced by China, so there's a lot of these cultures that are constantly influencing one another. French as well,
really good that baguette thing.
Baguette.
Banh mi.
All right. So now we reached towards the end of the podcast. Now, just have a couple of closing questions that I want to ask you all. What do you think of the future? What do you think about the future of the art scene in Southeast Asia? Where do you think we are going to go from here?
To infinity and beyond.
To space. More sci-fi movies. Yes, I want more sci-fi movies.
Yeah, maybe weird.
Yeah.
I want to know theater first, because most of the time, actually, theater influences the film industry.
Yeah.
Because like a lot of like for me, I would always seek out theater people to talk about like how their production works and how can I adapt that idea into film, right? Like if you talk about film musicals, right? Like how do you adapt? And everything all started from theater. Yeah. How do you adapt that theater musical into a film? That kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah. So I think like theater is always like the pioneer lah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think I will try to summarize what okay. So what I've understand is working in theater for the past 2 years or so, I've observed that not everybody can afford theater. Theater is a very it's a very high, like if you are well to do, you can afford it, you can actually go and enjoy theater. So how I'm seeing the future of art is going to be, it's going to come to a point where maybe 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, with stuff like gig economy coming in, and there's a lot more financial literacy amongst people, we're going to come to a point where humans will actually rely on passive income, right? That means the rich will no longer need to work. Or maybe they'll work, but they'll just be doing stuff that, on the side. But the rest of the stuff is just, most of the money will be coming in from their investments. And what they are going to be doing is they're going to be looking out for the arts. So I have a feeling, this is just a hunch, there's going to be an art renaissance in 10 years, 20 years down the road. That means there's going to be a lot more interest in the arts because the rich can afford it and they have a lot of time in their hands. They are bored. So they will want to look for art and stuff. Yeah.
That's very, very interesting.
So they would take care of the rich. And the film industry will take care of all the poor people.
And here's the interesting thing, because now the stigma is the artist is always struggling and all that stuff. Yeah. But I have a feeling in 10 years, 20 years time, if you're really good at what you're doing, and if you're an artist but you're also enterprising, you're also business savvy, you can actually be able to make a living.
Right, like Jay-Z. 50
Is
Cent,
Jay-Z still doing work? I don't know.
Dr. Dre.
But we'll have this conversation.
They enterprise themselves. They
He's a
create
billionaire
business.
now, right?
Yeah,
they
he has
create
his
a
own
business.
line of fashion.
Kanye West,
yeah.
they create their own business.
Yeah.
They stay with passive income.
Yeah.
And then they create whatever the hell.
Okay, if in
Sorry,
that
can I
case,
say?
Kenneth, you can go ahead. So, Kenneth, I expect you in the next 10 years to have your own shoe line.
Yeah, I
Okay.
can create like
All right, guys.
Kenzo's.
Kenzo's shoe line. All right, guys. Thank you very much for being on the podcast.
Thank
It's
you.
really
Thank you, guys.
nice to
Thank you,
have you
man.
all
Thank
here.
Thank you.
Appreciate y'all taking the time to come here. Guys, so again, you can check out our podcast on Spotify as well as a video version on our YouTube channel, Mashable Southeast Asia. And with that, guys, I will see you in the next podcast.